And with that, welcome inside our studios in this edition of Big Ten Today. Rick Pizzo, thrilled to be joined by Jake Butt. My man, it's been too long since we've done this.
Far too long.
I know it's been a while since you've done a spring as a college football player. When you think back to spring ball, spring practices, and finally getting to that spring game where you know that kind of spring grind is over, what do you think on?
As you mature, it's less of a big deal. But when you're a young guy, and nowadays, I was an early enrollee. Like nowadays, that's become completely normalized. Almost once you commit to a team, you want to get on campus.
So were you
early.
17 getting to campus?
I was 17 years old. I was 17 years old. Some of the veterans would like chew dip. I couldn't even buy dip at that point, you know. But it's first off for these young guys, it's a great opportunity to experience the stadium and game day operations, get in front of the fans. And there's a saying in football: you don't make the team in spring, and that's true. But you earn opportunities. It's a starting point for how you enter fall camp. Spring is for building trust and earning opportunities.
Yeah, you really dated yourself. I don't think they use that term dip anymore. I don't really think anybody necessarily really does that. But
good point.
Yeah.
Good point.
All right, so your jam-packed Saturday football schedule looks like this. It is today's big story. The Nebraska, Maryland, and Rutgers games can all be seen right here. It's noon Eastern for the Huskers, then 6 p.m. for the Terps, 8 for the Scarlet Knights. That's here on the Linear Network. Oregon, UCLA also wrapping up their respective springs on Saturday afternoon. Certainly one of the more was last year as well, the arrival of Matt Rhule and what the Huskers would look like under a new head coach. Certainly had their moments in 2023, some ups, some downs. I think Rhule would tell you fell short of what he wanted from this team in year one. As we get set to start year two and evaluate this team after the spring, what's the first thing we should be looking at?
I just think about the context of Matt Rhule and as he turned around Temple and Baylor. It was the second year that the jump gets made. And, you know, that so much of that is coaching, and so much of what Nebraska needed was coaching, because I think the record kind of lies to us a little bit. The record's the record. You're judged on that. But I think they were a good team that lost games because they did what bad teams do, meaning the turnovers, the self-inflicted wounds. It has been the same story year after year after year. That defense under Tony White was phenomenal. I think 9 of their 12 games, they held the opponent to under 20 points. You should be winning a bunch of games if that's the case. And yet, the self-inflicted wounds, the turnovers, the mental errors is what killed them. So then I say that to say the first thing that I'll be watching, you'll be watching, Nebraska fans will be watching is the quarterback room. And it seems like from every report, Dylan Raiola, their true freshman, is far ahead mentally than what you would expect for a young guy. And usually with freshmen, it's not about the arm talent. Clearly, he was a 5-star. He has the arm talent. It's about this up here. And as that applies to Nebraska's offense is, as a true freshman, can you avoid those mistakes that have plagued Nebraska? Spring game, he's going to get to go against this blitz-happy, exotic Tony White defense. I'm looking to him to see how he operates with the O-line, the receivers. Is he on the same page, and is he disciplined with the football? That's the key for Nebraska.
But I would also say this. Don't put too much into a freshman quarterback in a spring game. I remember calling the Penn State spring game when Drew Aller was brand new, bright-eyed, on campus. He looked awful. Threw 2 picks, should have thrown a third, and then we saw the progression throughout the summer, throughout the fall. And then suddenly, folks are saying, why isn't Drew Aller our starter? Mm-hmm. So I don't think you can judge Raiola on one go-round in the spring. I also think that fan base, knowing that last name and knowing that if you start to develop a freshman quarterback, what can happen to your team, they're going to want him in the starting lineup weekend one.
Well, we won't put a final stamp in judgment on him for sure, you know, but we will use it to just see where he's at.
We're going to evaluate.
And the value of the spring game versus spring ball is it's a game type operation. And this is a thing that I think about when it comes to spring ball. So the way practice is structured for the other 14 practices is you have periods. So say you have a third down period. That's going to be a rack of 10 scripted plays. Raiola may get 4 or 5 of those plays. If you throw an interception on play 1, you don't feel the pain of that mistake. It's play 1, they slap you on the butt, you get back out there for 4 plays, right? If you make a mistake in the spring game, you throw an interception, you have to jog to the sideline, sit down, and it becomes much more effective in teaching young guys the cost of mistake or the benefit of making the right reads.
And your offensive teammates are mad because it means you're one step closer to having hot dogs when the defense gets to have steak, the post-spring game dinner. Okay, outside of the quarterback, Where else should we be focused when we start to look at not the X's and O's, that's Matt Rule's job, but the Jimmies and the Joes? Because this team has had talent, but to your point, Jake, for whatever reason, those self-inflicted wounds have kind of outweighed the ability that we've seen on the field from this team to win more games than it should have been winning, not just under Matt Rule, but certainly under Scott Frost before him.
They have the formula, like the meat and potatoes of a successful team. I mean, some of the highest returning production across the board in the Big Ten. The O-line returns a ton of starters. I love their young weapons, Malachi Coleman, Jalen Lloyd, guys that were true freshmen last year that made some plays and can do some nice things. Again, those guys I'm excited to see. Can Tony White even progress on what happened last year? Right? And the key is there's no more East and West. So you're going to be going against different offenses than what the old West was. Can they progress and still hold opponents to under 20 points per game? Then if the offense improves, that's great. They return a ton of guys on the defensive side of the ball that had all Big Ten honors. And one guy I want to highlight, I think Nash Hutchmaker was the most underrated Big Ten defensive lineman last year. So he's a guy to keep an eye on.
He wrestled, by the way, for the Husker wrestling
He's a
team
beast.
this
He can do
past
it all.
winter. They were short at heavyweight. They said, number 0, get down on here. We can get you on the mat on the wrestling. Did an unbelievable job, too. Wrestled some of the, not just the Big Tens, but the nation's best as well. Spring game comes your way, noon Eastern here on Big Ten Network, and you can see it live. We'll talk with Mike Locksley coming up in just a bit to get a lot more on Maryland. But listen, when it comes down to the Terps, the first question I'm going to ask Locks, the first question that everybody is going to ask if you're a fan of this team, what's life like after Leah? And who gets the quarterback job? And can whoever it is continue with this high-octane offense that Mike Locksley's been known for?
Yeah. It's funny because Locks was asked this question as everyone's going to ask him to open the spring, and he told the media, he was like, guys, stop asking me. I do not know. I do not have an answer. And I'd imagine all the reports are that is still the answer right now. This is
so are you telling me I shouldn't ask him that as my first question?
Well, you can get away with things the other
8 or 9
You're
minutes.
Smooth.
All right,
yeah,
all right,
yeah.
I appreciate it.
You got great charisma. Okay, so is it Billy Edwards, a guy that had a ton of experience? You know, Talia was injured up and down throughout his career. He's come in and do some new things, but then they like MJ Morris from NC State. And what I'm hearing is MJ Morris, they're excited about his arm talent, his athleticism. Like, he checks all the box of a guy that could be a phenomenal quarterback, but it's up here. And that's the challenge with these transfer portal guys is you're learning a new system. You're building chemistry with your O-line and your weapons. How quickly can you learn? It sounds like he's still in the process of building a foundation. But for Maryland, we know with Locksley what this offense is going to be. They are reliant on good quarterback play. It's unlike Michigan, which is going to say, hey, we're relying on an O-line and run game. Of course, it all applies. Under Locksley, they need a guy that can distribute the ball out to their weapons, that can command the offense. That's what Talia did so well.
But they have weapons. I mean, Felton and Prather were 2 of the biggest play receivers in the Big Ten last year. Actually, Maryland was the only team, you would have thought Ohio State, the only team with 2 of the top 5 guys in terms of yards per catch. Felton and Prather were those 2 guys.
And that is exactly who Maryland is going to be. No defense feels great when you're lining up across from Locksley's offense. Like, they threaten you. Octavian Smith, I called their spring game last year, another guy to keep an eye on, takes the top off the defense. Preston Howard is a tight end to keep your eye on. He had a phenomenal game. He's a sophomore. So they have weapons. And yet, 3 new pieces across the offensive line.
Yeah, that's the big question, right?
So if you're going to have a new quarterback, you have to protect him. You have to give him time to distribute the ball. And then they got a deep running back room. So can they run the ball? It's so much of this is going to come right back to the offensive line.
I mean, Roman Hemby has the ability, if that offensive line plays well, he has the ability to have a monster season. But you have to have an offensive line in front of you to be able to run the football. I think, and I know Locks likes to throw it all around, he's as good designing offenses as anybody out there. This team's going to go as far as Roman Hemby takes it, I think. Absolutely. And he can catch the ball out of the backfield now. He's an improved blocker. I just think they're going to rely more on the run game in 2024 than they ever have before.
And a piece of this is putting it all together to create the big picture. The defense, particularly in the defensive front, they return a ton of experience. Like, that's something you can lean on. You also say, without the East and the West, Maryland is a team that's been right there, obviously a step behind Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State.
You think they may benefit?
I say that, and then I look at their schedule and I say, okay, you don't play Ohio State and Michigan this year, but you play Penn State, Oregon, and USC. I don't know that there's ever going to be a season where you feel great about your schedule. But
I don't know that they benefit, but I think there's a lot of teams in the West that we think this is going to hurt because teams like like Iowa's a great example, right? Everybody has said, well, Iowa has benefited more from the inequity of the East and West than any other team in the Big Ten, maybe any other team in college football with the inequity of divisions. That goes away. So maybe Maryland doesn't necessarily benefit, but maybe it doesn't hurt them quite as much as it hurts other teams. Also, you got to remember, this is a team now that is at a different level. Locks has gotten them to 3 consecutive bowl games. They've won all 3 of those games. He has not been shy about saying that's now the baseline. That's where we start. Everything else needs to go on top of that.
Absolutely.
And I think there's a similar story kind of being authored by Greg Schiano at Rutgers, right? When Schiano took over this program for the second time, it was not in a good spot. And yes, they have still struggled against the likes of the best, Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan. But against everybody else, Jake, they have not just been competitive. They've won games. They've sniffed bowl eligibility in other years. They've gotten there under Schiano again. This is a program that, again, time will tell as we go into the new look Big Ten, but Schiano has them back on that upward trend and the right trajectory.
They might have the largest momentum going into the Big Ten, into this season for everything you just mentioned. And really, they scared Ohio State. They were in that game.
Scared a lot of people last year.
There was self-inflicted. They could have easily won that game. They were in the game at Michigan before Mikey Sainristil intercepted and went on the 4th down play. So Schiano has taken this program and slowly built out the identity of who he wants this to be, which is let's have a run-first physical offense and let's play great defense. And you look at the context of spring ball and say the pieces are in play for them to do that once again. A ton of return in production on the defensive side of the ball. You have the Big Ten's leading rusher and Kyle Monungai back. You return a bunch of guys on the offensive line, and then it all comes back to quarterback, right? Is it Wimsatt, a guy that's certainly progressed, and I think he's valuable in the run game. He's a dangerous runner. Or are you going to look at Callie McManus, a guy that transfers in from Minnesota, where he played under Kirk Shiraka, your offensive coordinator? That's what I'm going to be watching this week, because I think the offense will look different if it's Wimsatt under center versus Callie McManus. But if they can get even average quarterback play from one of those guys, this is an extremely dangerous team.
And I think that's a situation where you say, well, guys have different skill sets. Both have experience. Both can win. Do you consider a dual threat quarterback kind of situation? With Schiano's background and his time in the NFL, I'm not sure he wants to be a guy who plays 2 quarterbacks unless he absolutely has to. I'm guessing he would prefer for one guy to emerge and say, we are going to run the style of offense that suits this quarterback best.
Sure, and really, if it's close, it'll be interesting to see what he values more. Does he value the legs of Wimsatt, even if, Callie McManus can't run it, or does he value the passing potential of a Callie McManus? They do have some new pieces in the receiver room. That's something to watch. Johnny Langan, their tight end, they're going to be replacing him. So, again, to me, it's going to come down to how he sees this offense and which guy best fits that mold.
It seemed like Johnny Langan might have been at Rutgers for like 11 years.
Yeah, he was there
7
forever.
different positions. I think he was coaching and playing at the same time. Rutgers does come off its first winning season, 7-6, first winning season in basically a decade. It was 9 full seasons, so now they head in to that 10th year, riding a wave of momentum. Realistically, in this new league, and remember, because of the schedule, there's 2 byes, so a lot of it depends on who you play, when you play them, when you have to make those West Coast road trips. What's success again? Is it just getting back to a bowl game, or does it actually have to build on what last year was and maybe reach that 8-win plateau, which in this league is going to be a really big ask?
I think each year is different, right? And for Rutgers, you look at this year, and they return a massive amount of production, leadership on both sides of the football. Their identity is intact. And in this new league, it's one of those years where stars have aligned. They avoid Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State on their schedule this year. So you have all this returning production. You're avoiding the big 3 that's been, your Achilles heel these past few years. You return the Big Ten's leading rusher and Monungai. If there's a year to get to 8 wins, it's this year. And then you say, can you build off that momentum in recruiting and start to make this more of the standard going forward?
I would also say this before we close on Rutgers. If there's a more underrated running back, a more underrated player maybe in the nation than Kyle Monungai, Jake, I'm not sure who it is.
And on the defense, Aaron Lewis too, right? This is a team that just gets overlooked by those that don't follow it closely. Yeah. This is a physical, excellent football team.
Yeah, I think Rutgers has a chance. I'm not sure 8 wins is in the cards with the schedule, But can they get back to a bowl game again for 2 consecutive?
Sure.
I don't see any reason why they can't have a winning record for 2 consecutive seasons.
Absolutely.
Now, we do have some developing news, just learning on Tuesday morning, and this is a little bit of a surprise to me. Brendan Sullivan, Northwestern quarterback, entering the transfer portal.
Yeah. And why?
I'm not sure.
You would have thought, I mean, he was the most experienced quarterback. You would have thought this guy is the run. So do they feel that there's someone
is he getting
that's
a vibe?
beating him out? That's the question.
Yeah, really interesting. Update you on this story as we get more from Evanston. But first, more spring storylines still to come. Jake returning in a bit with his take on what to watch for when 2 of the Big Ten's new West Coast editions take the field. But first, we locks it up. Maryland head coach Mike Locksley on life after Leah. What's next after 3 straight bowl games and just how good this defense can be. Locks always looking good. He's with us in just a few minutes. And Maryland will host its annual Red-White Spring Game noon Eastern Saturday inside CQ Stadium. The game will be streamed live on Big Ten Plus, then air in its entirety on the Big Ten Network at 6 o'clock Eastern. What a wonderful job Mike Locksley has done since his return to the DMV post-COVID. And with his stamp fully on the program, Maryland has been to 3 straight postseasons, winning 3 consecutive bowl games. Offense has been explosive. Defense has been underrated. And now the Terps have Big Mo on their side, heading into year 1 of a new-look Big Ten. And the big interview takes us to College Park, where we find our friend Mike Locksley. Locks, always great to see you. How's life, my man?
Rick, what's up? How are you? I'm doing well.
Hey, Locks, I want to phrase this the right way because I know there's no such thing in college coaching now as an off-season. So, in the time between the end of last year and when we see your team on the field for the spring game on Saturday, what's been your biggest focus?
You know what? Just trying to build the roster. As we all know, this new landscape has made it to where developing a team over a 3-4 year cycle has kind of gone out the window. And what you've got to do is every year is a new team. And so what I've tried to do is build this year's version or this year's iteration of the 24 Maryland football family, trying to build it from the ground up with our off-season program and culminating with the red and white game this Saturday.
I know you've said in the past that getting to the bowl game, which you've done 3 straight times, even winning a bowl game, which you've done 3 straight times, now has to be the baseline. So what comes next that you've reached that base in 3 consecutive years?
You know what? I said this a year ago, and we're not backing off of it. The next step for us is to compete for Big Ten championships, which then allow us, hopefully with this expanded playoffs, to have an opportunity to play at the highest level and play and make a playoff run. That's the next step, and that's the big vision we have here, and that's what we're building and preparing to do.
I know Saturday's spring game, it's fun for the fans. It's a showcase that kind of supplements what you guys get to see during practice and all the hard work in the spring. From a big picture perspective of execution, fundamentals, and chemistry, how do you feel as a coaching staff right now?
I feel really good. We get 15 of these opportunities in the spring to develop your roster, to figure out who your playmakers will be in all 3 phases. And, we're one of those programs that because of the type of recruiting we've done and the way we've developed players, I really like where our team sits heading into the summer workouts, which lead into our season. We still got a lot of decisions to make, starting with who our quarterback will be. And we've been having really healthy competition. And I've had a chance now going back into that room to really get a bird's eye view. And I like the way these guys are competing at that position to replace the all-time leading passer in the history of the Big Ten, Talia Tagovailoa. And, as I told that group of quarterbacks, their job is to move the ball and to be a distributor. And I like the way this room has competed.
See, you just did me a huge favor because I didn't even have to ask you about the quarterbacks. I know your answer was right now, I'm not sure who takes over with life after Leah. So you just did me a solid, man.
Well, I'm already giving you the segues. I'm helping you out, Rick.
You always are. Always are. I think you returned 4 starters on offense, and that's a small number, I know, but 3 were all Big Ten selections. And Roman Hemby has become not just one of the best backs in this league, he's become one of the best backs in the country. How comfortable are you with him being able to build on his production, even behind an offensive line that's going to be a new look for you this year?
Yeah, it will definitely be a new look. And when you talk about only 3 returning starters, the one beauty of how we've built this team is we have a lot of guys that played a lot of football that maybe not as starters. You look at the tight end position and you see a guy like Preston Jackson or Preston Thomas, I'm sorry, who's played quite a bit. Dylan Wade, one of those true freshman tight ends, and AJ Samansky. These are all three guys that played in almost every game a year ago and will be that much better as they head into starting positions now. And so definitely encouraged. As far as Roman, he's the epitome of what a Maryland developed football player looks like. A guy that has come into our program, and each year he's gotten better and better to where he's an all-conference guy now heading into his final year. And what I hope to see is him become an All-American type player. He has the ability. We do have a new look O-line. We've lost, 2 or 3 starters 2 years ago and replaced them. And I feel really good about bringing in some of the guys we've brought in that can help us immediately up front.
Lox, you've always had good receivers on your team, whether it's as a head coach in College Park, back to your OC days in Champaign. You've had guys who can catch the ball, take the top off. You look at Ty and Caden last year, both inside the top 5 in terms of yards per completion. They are true game breakers. What does that mean for what this offense can do regardless of who ultimately gets the nod at quarterback?
Yeah, when you have 2 proven playmakers like Caden and Ty, and these guys are battle tested in Big Ten play. Caden coming over as a transfer where he played there at West Virginia, and then Ty, again, one of those guys that's entering his 3rd or 4th year in our program and really has gotten better with each year. As a quarterback, a guy that's coaching the quarterback position, to have those type of playmakers along with a Roman Hemby, you got those 2 young tight ends who I think the world of, Dylan Wade and Preston, who both have so much potential as receivers, and then AJ Samansky in the run game. So the quarterback's job will be easy when you got those type of players around them.
Defensively, a lot comes back. I mean, Bruin, I would think, is the unquestioned leader, but you got Quayshawn up front, who has really become a little bit of a game record. And that secondary, Dante Trader, Glendon Miller, part of a group. You guys were top 5 in the country in terms of interceptions a year ago. I know it's tough to compare and contrast. Does this group at least have the potential to maybe be the best defense that you guys have had since you came back to the DMV?
You're right. It's hard to compare and contrast, but I can tell you when you look at the type of players and the production that we have returning, and B-Dub, as we affectionately call Brian Williams, has done a tremendous job with the defensive staff of getting them to play together. I mean, it's one of those no-name type defenses. We have a lot of really talented players, but, maybe not the stars or the star names where you hear a lot. But as you said, all they've done is quietly put together, 2 good years of improvements. And I definitely see defense being the strength of our team. Obviously with the new quarterback coming in, we'll have to ride that defensive production, that defensive leadership that we've developed to help us as we continue to find out our identity on offense post Leah.
All right, Lox, let's touch on a couple of new guys. I believe that there's 9 of your 24 signees who are early enrollees that we could potentially see on Saturday. You also hit the portal for about a half dozen transfers. Any new names that you think we could see on Saturday make a splash and make us think about what they could potentially do for your team in the fall?
Obviously when you bring in the transfers and I've been on the record, the only way we're in the portal is if we have immediate need. And so when you think of that, you think of a Jalen Husky who transferring in and coming up from Bowling Green, a local product guy that we knew a lot about, became an all-conference player there at BG and transferring back in and replacing, obviously, 2 talented players in Jaquan Shepard and Tarheeb Steele. He's a guy that's really stood out this spring. You look at, on the offensive line, these guys won't be household names, but, Alan Haran and Lou Ba are both great additions. And even the Josh Kaltenberger coming in from Purdue as a grad transfer. All 3 of those guys have really kind of meshed and gelled, and having a spring under their belt has really helped the way we've developed up front. So a lot of new faces. I expect some of these high school freshmen that are in our program to be able to come in and help us as well. Now,
I'm a big schedule guy, and I looked hard at your schedule. I like the setup because it's a 14-week schedule for you guys, which means you get 2 byes. Yours come in week 5 and week 10, which appear to be pretty good timing. Obviously, things can change, but on the surface, that's good timing. And the second one comes right before you have to make the long trip out to Eugene. You also get the 5 home, 4 away this year. Do you like the schedule set up as much as I do?
I just know we're not the new kids on the block anymore, and we're not getting the new kid on the block prices that we got with some of the scheduling we've seen in the past. But it's great to have our four new members join and maybe have to deal with some of the things that Rutgers and we had to deal with. But no, it's a good schedule. I like the layout. I can't complain. To have the 2 byes right at kind of the halfway point of the season and right near the end. And I'd say that the Big Ten schedule gods looked down and looked out for old Coach Locks, man, for the years of purgatory they had me in.
Locks, I've been told, I've asked many times, I've been told it's a computer. The computer spits it out, the computer doesn't. That's what I've been told. That's what I've been told. I'm not trying to tell you that. I'm just telling you what I've been told. Hey, Locks, it's always great to catch up. Wish you and the guys the best of luck this Saturday. It'll be a lot of fun watching. And, of course, look forward to seeing you on the field this fall as well.
You got it. Appreciate you, Rick.
All right, from College Park to the West Coast, when we come back, Jake Butler joining the show to help us learn a bit more about 2 of the new kids on the block. We'll get the expert insight on UCLA and Oregon. It really was nothing short of an epic regular season finale. Northwestern outlasting Michigan 13-12 to claim the Big Ten women's lacrosse regular season title for the 2nd straight year, 3rd time in the past 4 seasons. Stars shined as they always do for the Cats. Izzy Skane, Aaron Kuykendall, Dylan Amonte leading the way for the top-ranked Wildcats. It is time for your big stat. NU closing with 5 straight wins to earn the top seed in the Big Ten tournament and a bye into next week's semifinals, which will coincidentally be played in Evanston. Cats have had a hammerlock on the nation's #1 ranking this year, while Izzy Skane, already the Big Ten's all-time leading goal scorer, closes in on the all-time NCAA scoring record. And we are thrilled now to head to Evanston. Welcome in Kelly Amonte-Hiller, head coach of the Wildcats. Kelly, I know you've won a lot of championships, regular season, tournament title, NCAA. They're all special for different reasons. What made this one stand out over the weekend?
Well, I think just having to go play a very tough team on the road. Obviously, the Michigan head coach, Hannah Nielsen, played for us, is an absolute just unreal coach, worker, person. And, it was pretty special to have that battle against our 2 teams to fight for the championship. And, it could have gone either way. And we were fortunate enough to have it go our way.
It was such a phenomenal back and forth game. Scoring runs by both teams, great defensive stands for long stretches by both teams. How do you best describe the quality of lacrosse that we saw?
Well, I think the Big Ten is on top this year. It's pretty exciting to see how we've fared against our out of conference play, and Michigan is one of the top team in the country. You go down the line, you've got Maryland, Penn State, you've got Hopkins, and you really anyone can win on any given day. And that's really what you want as a conference. I hope that positions us really well as a conference down the stretch for the NCAA tournament as well.
Dylan Amonte scores the game winner. She knew all along and seemed to really embrace the extra pressure that would come with playing for you, playing at Northwestern with that last name. What about her personality, her mental makeup allowed her to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think Dylan, her whole career has been one of the smarter players on our offensive end. She's just really steady and reliable. But I think as of late, last year, towards the end of the season, and now this year, she's really finding a new level of confidence where she's not afraid to take risks. She's going to go out there. She's going to put her shots away. And it's been really cool to see her progression, and just really proud of her and the rest of the offense for making things happen.
Michigan obviously focused early in the game on shutting down Izzy Skane. It is rare that she doesn't find the net in a half. She was shut out in the first half. Then she finds a way to score a hat trick in the second half. She is now 7 goals away, I believe, from the all-time NCAA record. What's the legacy that she's ultimately going to leave, not just on your program, but on women's college lacrosse in general?
Well, I think for us, she really helped us kind of get it over the top. She has a tremendous level of, fearlessness and confidence, and she's learned over the years in our program really how to stay steady and not let setbacks and not let all of the, defensive attention or pressure that she's getting impact her. And so I think for us, she's has a massive impact. And then, just across the country, I think that you're seeing this year, there's so much incredible talent and parity within our sport. And Izzy is just kind of a mainstay of, who people know. And she's performing at such a high level. It just attracts more people to our game. And it's really exciting the time that we're in right now.
She is once again, of course, on the list to win the Tewaaraton as the nation's best player. Madison Taylor, Aaron Kuykendall there as well. Now, Aaron and Izzy have been with you together for 5 years. Izzy a sixth year, Aaron a grad student. What's it been like to coach that duo for the last 5 seasons?
Yeah, it's almost it's hard to imagine one without the other. So it's just really fun. They play off of really well off of each other. They're best friends. And they want the best for each other. They want to make each other look good, as well as our other players like Madison Taylor and Dylan and you go down the line. So when you have a group like that wants to make each other look great, you can't help but have some success.
You did mention Hannah Nielsen, who obviously a national champion 4 times, I believe, herself, Tewaaraton Award winner herself, playing for you at Northwestern. And even though Michigan fell for a 16th consecutive time to your program, the Wolverines are clearly on an upward trajectory. How much pride do you take in seeing your former players like Hannah succeed in coaching?
Yeah, it's incredible to watch her kind of take hold of this program and just really bring it to the top of the lacrosse world. We talk a lot, and as well as I talk with Tim McCormick from Hopkins, who was a former assistant of mine. I take incredible amounts of pride. There's a lot of connections amongst the coaching group within the Big Ten, and I'm just proud of those connections and to be part of, the legacy of lacrosse that's helping this game grow and get to the next level.
Coincidentally, you could play Michigan again in the semis. You'll play the winner of Michigan and Johns Hopkins. Now, it's interesting because you just saw Michigan, but it's been over a month. Hopkins was your first conference game of the year. How does that kind of affect your pregame scout as you, I assume, get ready for both teams?
Yeah, I think this week we're just really trying to focus on us getting better and kind of moving the ball forward. We've played all of the conference opponents and we kind of have a great familiarity with them. So now it's just kind of us sharpening up our skills, seeing what we can do to be our best self. And then, on Saturday evening, we find out who our next opponent is, whether it's Johns Hopkins, who we haven't seen in a while, or Michigan, who we saw last week. Michigan and us have made a habit of kind of seeing each other week after week. Same thing last year. We played in the Big Ten tournament, and then a week later, they were coming to us for the NCAA. So this is a common theme, and we know that if we want to be great, we have to get through the best, no matter which Big Ten team it is.
All right, Kelly, let's finish here. I mentioned that the semis and finals are in Evanston this year. That's got to be really special for players like Izzy and Aaron and Dylan and others who will be finishing their careers at the end of this season. I know you don't necessarily want to think about that for them right now, but how cool is it to be able to do it in your backyard?
Anytime we get to play at home, it's a huge, huge advantage. We have an incredible fan base and following in Evanston, and hopefully we can make it a great environment for all 4 teams, and we're just really, really blessed and excited to host.
Those semifinals to be played on Thursday, May the 2nd. Kelly Amonte Hiller of the recently crowned, once again, regular season champs of Big Ten Women's Lacrosse, Northwestern. Kelly, always great to catch up. Best of luck in the tournament.
Thank you so much. Go Cats.
Now, Oregon is widely considered one of the Big Ten's preseason favorites as the Ducks transition into the new look league. Former Oklahoma QB Dillon Gabriel, the presumed successor to Bo Nix. And while Oregon does lose 7 starters on defense, Dan Lanning, a little bit of a defensive guru, also signed one of the top transfer groups in the nation to join a program which outscored its opposition by an FBS 28 points a year ago. As promised, Jake Butt returns into the show as we dive a bit deeper into this Duck team. I know talent leaves. I know Bo Nix, a Heisman Trophy candidate, is gone. I don't think anybody believes Oregon's going to take a big step back.
No, talent leaves, and then Dan Lanning does what he's done since he got on campus, which is replace it. Transfer portals, recruiting's been great. I mean, they have the best quarterback room in the Big Ten by far. I mean, Dillon Gabriel had an excellent career at Oklahoma. Then you get Dante Moore, who was a 5-star with experience at UCLA. So you have the guy for today and tomorrow. And the piece of this, too, is like the system. You look at Bo Nix' stats at Auburn. If he had remained at Auburn, he wouldn't be a first-round pick. But what he did at Oregon, all of a sudden, he's a lock, in my opinion, to be a first-round pick. He improved his completion percentage by 20%. So you'd expect these guys to take a step. Okay, you lose Troy Franklin at wide receiver. You go and get Evan Stewart from Texas A&M, the number 2 player in the portal. So they're completely loaded. I see so many parallels, Rick, between Ohio State and Oregon. Roster to roster, these are 2 of the best in the conference. Both teams have felt like they could be in that national championship conversation, and yet Oregon lost twice to Washington last year. 2 chances, couldn't get it done. Ohio State just couldn't get over the Michigan hump. So these are 2 teams with loaded rosters that feel like this is the year to go make a run.
And, of course, really the Oregon run started with Chip Kelly, who is now calling plays for Ryan Day at Ohio State. So that parallel lasts more than a decade in the making. And it says a lot, too, about Dante Moore. I mean, here's a guy who, in terms of recruiting coming out of high school, like everybody wanted him off the charts, and he goes and probably knows that right now he is behind Dillon Gabriel, at least right now in terms of experience. Most people believe that Gabriel has the upper hand.
And what does that say about Dan Lanning to convince a guy to come knowing he's likely going to sit this year? Usually when you transfer, it's so you can get playing time. Rarely do you transfer, especially at the quarterback position, knowing you're going to sit. But when Dante Moore did this, he was asked about it, and he said, listen, I don't care about right now or today. He's like, I want to go to the right place where I can develop and learn this quarterback position.
Coaches love to hear that.
And why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, I go back to the Bo Nix and look at the difference in quarterback play he had from Auburn to Oregon. Like, seriously, set and setting and the right system for a quarterback is night and day. So Dante Moore has 5-star potential. That's why he was a 5-star in high school. But now you get to be in the Oregon system, and you learn under Dillon Gabriel, who should be in the Heisman conversation to start the season.
Yeah, and after the level of competition that Oregon had to play with, obviously those only losses to a team that make it to the college football playoff, yes, you transition into a new league, but I don't think you feel at all like you are out of place, no matter whether you have to go to the big house in coming years or to Columbus or wherever. I actually think you're looking forward to this and telling all these other great trademark, hallmark programs, okay, come to Eugene. See how it treats you.
Exactly. I mean, seriously, like, not every team has the luxury to say that. I know Washington played in the national championship this year, but they are bottom 5% of the entire college football landscape in terms of returning production.
Yes.
They have question marks across the board. Whereas Oregon sitting here, they're looking, I bet the conversation this spring is, guys, we have the best roster in the Big Ten Conference right now. Teams will have to play us. I know Ohio State thinks that. Shoot, Michigan return. There's a bunch of teams that say that. But Oregon can say that with confidence that they're right there in that conversation.
I don't know that I could find a hard disagreement against you. I can also tell you from personal experience, I had the chance to go watch a game out there maybe about a decade ago when Michigan State and Oregon had a home and home. I believe may have been 2015. Really good Michigan State team. Went out to Eugene, weren't able to get it done. It is a big-time home field advantage. And Big Ten fans, if your favorite team is headed out there, it is absolutely worth a trip. Great location, great home fans, really fun place to watch a football game. Down the coast a little bit, we go to L.A. and a little bit of a different story at UCLA because all sorts of transition. This must be the Chip Kelly-related block because, of course, Kelly leaves, now at Ohio State, replaced by former running back Deshaun Foster. Few roster questions have to be answered, but there's no questioning this schedule. It's the 5th toughest, not in the Big Ten. In all of college football, they play Oregon and USC at home. They have to make road trips to Penn State and Washington in the league, and they have a non-conference road game in Baton Rouge against LSU. I mean, I know this is a great opportunity for Deshaun Foster. It's his alma mater. You could have seen how emotional he was in his introductory press conference. Would have run to take that job in any situation, but you are walking into a very tough ask with this roster at this time, that schedule.
And the players know that too, okay? Like the players won't lie to themselves. The staff won't lie to their players or themselves. They know that this is not just an easy task where, okay, we got our head coach in the roster celebrated. They love that he was named the head coach. But this is no easy task. And I don't think if you're UCLA, the goal shouldn't be to go win the conference and win the national championship this year. The goal is to find out who you want to be with Foster as your head coach. Former running back. Okay, so can they improve the offensive line? They were 113th in sacks last year. The quarterbacks were getting killed. So you bring back Ethan Garbers as a quarterback. You have Eric Bieniemy as your play caller, who most famously was there with the Chiefs, then the Commanders. You know, what does this look like offensively with all these new pieces? At least you have the quarterback in place, but they have to have an identity. On the defensive side of the ball, Rick, it's the same thing. D'Anton Lynn was their defensive coordinator. He goes right across town, and he did a phenomenal job. Seriously, UCLA was an excellent defense, completely revamped under him. They hired from within with Akaya Malo, so they'll maintain the same system. But once again, I think Liatu Latu, their defensive end, is the best defensive player in the draft.
As an NFL prospect, he's off the charts.
So how do you replace him? Again, there's just so much mystery, and then you have the mystery of what does this look like in the Big Ten. Then you have the mystery of what does it look like in the Big Ten with all the new coaches and the new players. This is a year where it's not about going to chase for the highest high. You want to establish who you want to be. Wins or losses aside, you want to establish what team you want to be in this new Big Ten conference.
I can tell you Deshaun Foster is the kind of guy that you do want to root for. I was actually working in North Carolina when he was drafted and started his NFL career with the Carolina Panthers. He's a true team player, was as a player, has been as an assistant coach. He's the guy that I think a lot of folks want to be successful. Wanting to be successful and being successful in this league with that schedule, as we've said, don't want to beat it to death, but it's going to be a really, really tough challenge for UCLA in 2024.
And as a player, I think that plays into his hands because he's going to demand a lot out of his roster, but he won't demand anything he didn't do when he was a player there, point. Right? Like, that's a benefit that he has, and it seems like the locker room is fully behind him.
All the way.
Yes.
All the way. All right, one final break, and then we are feeling the draft. The NFL draft, that is. A look at the league's lock and potential first-rounders coming up, like that guy, Marv, lock, Coop, probably, and JJ, who continues to rise up draft boards, maybe even top 5. That convo next. Tonight, Big Ten softball coming your way when the Hawkeyes head to Lincoln for a double dip with the Huskers. Coverage begins at 5 Eastern, only on the Big Ten Network and the Fox Sports app. Take a look at the Big Ten players projected to go in the first round. This according to FoxSports.com. J.J. McCarthy ahead of Marvin Harrison because the Vikings want a quarterback. Word is they're going to move up inside the top 5, and word is they like the former Michigan man. No surprise to see Olu Fashanu there inside the top 10, ready-made offensive lineman. Cooper DeJean does a little bit of everything, really athletic D-back, and Johnny Newton. If the Packers get Newton at 25, anybody gets Newton late in the first round, I think they are getting an absolute steal. Let's start at the top. I don't think you're as surprised as most people to see J.J. McCarthy rising as high as he has on draft boards.
No, not at all. And people talk about the numbers consistently, and yet I've seen enough of J.J.'s ability. There's not a throw that he can't make. He just didn't. He wasn't.
They didn't need him to make him.
They didn't need him. Drake May needed to make it. Caleb Williams needed to make it. Jaden Daniels needed to make it. I'm not going to fault a guy for having a quality roster. He played within the system. I also love his leadership, and I think that's something that gets underrated by quarterbacks. When he was being recruited to Michigan, he would call the wide receivers and the other recruits and say, hey, if you want to come to college to party and chase girls, this isn't the place for you. Okay, he said that as a 17-year-old. Like, that's maturity. And I do think that is important in terms of commanding your locker room. So I know maybe It's all a guessing game anyways. There's no guarantee that Caleb, Drake, or Jaden will be great either, but just getting a chance to know JJ, he's just not the guy I would bet against. In terms of situation, the Vikings are the best situation of any of these.
I am going to make a guarantee. This is a lead pipe lock statement. If Marvin Harrison goes to a team that has a decent quarterback, he will be the offensive rookie of the year next year.
And that's why I would be shocked if the Cardinals traded out of that 4th pick because they desperately need a wide receiver and you paid Kyler Murray. So why not take Marvin right there? Yeah, safe pick.
All right, later in that draft, we saw some of the names that could go later first round. Cooper DeJean, Johnny Newton, other guys like that. I mean, always late in the first round, you find a guy who's a longtime Pro Bowler.
Yeah, Chop Robinson is another that wasn't
name
on there. Tyler Nubin was a guy that was a lock first-round pick for the majority of the season, and yet it seems like no safeties will go. But you're exactly right. Some of these teams that don't have glaring holes in that back third of the draft, they're going to get some Pro Bowl-type players.
Develop guys as well, which is always good stuff. Thanks to all of our guests, and of course, Jake Butt. I'm Rick Bezo, and thanks to you once again for the hang here on Big Ten Today.